If you're an Arch Linux user, you have an Nvidia card, and you did a system update in the last couple of days, you probably already know what this video is. If you haven't done an update yet, or maybe you're thinking about building a new system that has an Nvidia card and is running Arch Linux, well, there's some fun you've got to keep in mind. So, the latest update caused some, problems, we will say. And this is primarily the fault of Nvidia. Don't get me wrong, Nvidia is the one that chose to make this happen. However, Arch Linux are the ones who chose to handle it the way they did. A few days back, this was sent to me. Update package 590.48.01-1. This is an update to the Nvidia drivers, and at the time, I didn't really think much of it, I didn't read it. In retrospect though, I probably should have, not because I have an Nvidia card, but because a lot of you guys do, and yeah, as I said, it has caused some issues. So, Arch Linux updated the Nvidia drivers to 590, and normally, this wouldn't be that big of a deal. In fact, normally, this would just be a good thing. But it did require making a news post. These are duplicated on the Arch Linux website, and if you want to see them in your terminal, there are tools like Arch Update to go and see them as you do an update. Personally, I don't think a tool like this should be necessary. I think this should be something built directly into Pacman, so it's either on by default, or you can toggle it on so you can actually see what is changed when you go and update. So many people have no idea that Arch even posts news. Now, I'll talk about the news a bit later, but Arch tends to miss a lot of things as well anyway, so maybe it wouldn't be the perfect solution in the first place. So what is the big deal then? Well, as of the latest driver update, Turing is the oldest supported GPU series. That means both Maxwell, your 900 series, and Pascal, your 10 series, is, no longer supported. Cards like your 1050 Ti, your 1060, 1070, 1080, you know, the 10 series cards. Now, the reason this is a big deal, even though these GPUs are going on 10 years old as of next year, is quite a few people still happen to have these. Here is the Steam hardware survey. Let's search 1050 Ti, 1.38%, 1060, 1.8%, 1070, 0.76, 1070 Ti is not anywhere near as many, 1080, 0.49%. These are not massive numbers, but if you were to put them all together, it'd probably be something like 8, 9, 10% of people, at least according to Steam hardware survey, have one of these GPUs. And a big part of the reason why is that was the last time that GPUs were actually kind of affordable, because following that is when you started to get the ray tracing stuff. Now, there was the 1600 series, and 1600 is Turing, so those are still supported, but the main stuff, the RTX cards, which are the only cards now, when ray tracing became a thing, then we started getting prices to match. Not only that, shortly after we had the crypto boom, which, well, we all know what that did to hardware prices. And then we had the AI boom, which hasn't directly affected GPUs just yet, but is affecting memory, and very shortly is going to cause a lot of damage there. And just as we were starting to see prices kind of recover, it's gonna get really bad again. So there is quite a few people that are still holding onto these older GPUs. Now, with this change, it's kind of two changes in one. There's a change for the older cards that are no longer supported, and also a change for the Turing or later cards. So, the Nvidia package is being replaced with Nvidia-Open, Nvidia-DKMS with Nvidia-Open-DKMS, and Nvidia-LTS with Nvidia-LTS-Open. Now, I'm not a fan of the weird, inconsistent naming, but it is what it is. If you have a Turing or later card, that is 16 and 20 series or later, when you update, you're going to be prompted to replace the package with the new package. Say yes. say that you want to replace the package, and everything should just be working. There shouldn't be any concerns with the still supported cards. Now, if you say no, well, that's your fault and you shouldn't have said no. But there is a bit of confusion about what Nvidia Open actually means. It does not mean the open source Nvidia drivers, those being the Novo drivers. What it actually means, and ignore the GitHub warning, I'll deal with it later, is the open GPU kernel modules. You might have heard about these, I don't know, 3 or so years ago now. This is the one part of the Nvidia driver stack that is actually open. These are the modules that get loaded into the kernel. The user space driver itself, the actual, Nvidia driver that you interact with, that part is still, that's still proprietary. But at least the kernel modules, which are not actually part of the kernel, that's why there's an additional package for it. Nvidia is a whole mess. This is open. And this, for a while now, has been what Nvidia has been saying is the official way of handling the GPU drivers. I don't have an Nvidia card to test this, but I have seen some people say that when they swapped over to these modules, it did lead to some level of performance reduction. Other people are saying that there's no problem whatsoever, so it might be card-based, it might be configuration-based, it might be users who have some weird skewed testing methodology or don't even realize what they're running, so I can't really say one way or another whether it's going to be a perfectly clean migration, but this is the only thing that Nvidia is supporting going forward, so even if it's not clean, you don't really have a choice anymore. But for these older cards that are no longer supported, if you just go and do a system update and just leave it as is, you basically have a broken Nvidia driver because the driver no longer supports your GPU, and obviously you're going to have no GPU kind of problems. It's going to render at a weird resolution if you even get your desktop working. So there is a migration plan. I wouldn't call it a strategy, more like a guideline, a guidepost, a lighthouse in the distance. What you need to do is remove the Nvidia package, the Nvidia LTS package, and the Nvidia DKMS package, and then install the legacy branch Nvidia-580XX-DKMS from the AUR. So now if you have a 10 series or older GPU, you have to use the AUR or get in the packages some other way to have a working properly GPU. No, this is not a joke. Yes, this is 100% serious. If you want to keep using Arch Linux with the Nvidia card, you're gonna be using the AUR from now on. Have fun with that. But the migration isn't actually this simple. There is more to it that is not actually being said here. If you have an Nvidia card, you're very likely someone who plays some games. And people noticed that you couldn't install Steam any longer, and that's because Steam has a certain dependency, lib32-vulkan-driver. Normally, this would be provided by the lib32-nvidia-utils. This package is reliant on the main Nvidia packages. The main Nvidia packages that you no longer have installed on your system and can no longer use because they no longer support your GPU. The solution to this is another AUR package, that being lib32-nvidia-580xx-utils. This will also provide the 32-bit OpenGL driver as well, which for various things you might possibly need. Now, the migration isn't actually as simple as just replacing the package. So you're going to have to do some force removals because you're going to have things that depend on these packages. So you've basically got to remove the package first, breaking all the dependencies, and then bring in the new package, and then reboot, and hopefully you're all good. Also, make sure that you have Linux headers installed, or the headers for your specific kernel, because if you don't, and you try to install this first, it's also gonna break. Also, if you search Nvidia-580XX, there are going to be some other packages that replace various other things which now no longer work with your GPU, which were working about, I have a watch, but about 4 days ago. All of these, you're going to notice, are being maintained by the same person. Also, all of these, again, are on the AUR. So have fun with the AUR. But all of these being maintained by the same person, Venturio. This is someone from the CashOS project. And basically, they are the only reason that these GPUs are not collapsing around Arch Linux. So a big thank you to the CashOS project for doing this migration, for doing this maintenance, and making sure that your GPUs actually still work. As I said earlier, the ultimate fault here lies with Nvidia. They have chosen to no longer support Pascal GPUs. And with Nvidia being in complete control of what is and is not supported by their driver stack because the user space driver is proprietary, take your complaints to them, right? There is nothing that Arch Linux could do without making a whole new driver, without working on the Novo project, something like that, that would keep the Nvidia driver actually working with the driver updates. With that being said, Arch Linux does have some blame for how they chose to handle the problem. This was not an issue that was just suddenly discovered. It was known during the 590 beta that 10 and 900 series GPUs were going to be dropped. This post is from the 3rd of December. Why is the highlight black? Whatever. This is a problem that could have been announced earlier so users knew it was coming. Very easily, someone in the Arch team could have said, okay, we are going to do a pre-announcement in, let's say, a week. In 2 weeks, we will be dropping support for these older cards. Keep that in mind. We'll post an update on the migration when it happens, but understand that this is happening. Instead, the way they went with it is when they pushed the update, then they pushed the news post. And honestly, considering how rarely breaking changes actually get posted to the Arch newsfeed, this is actually a rare exception. Very rarely do they actually make 2 posts in 1 month. They've kind of conditioned users into not really looking at the newsfeed. I said it before, and I'll say it again. The best place to actually get Arch Linux news is the Arch Linux subreddit. Every single possible thing that breaks is going to be posted here, along with a complete solution. Not just like one package you might need to migrate, all of the additional things. That post I showed you earlier, that was also on the Arch Linux subreddit. Secondly, there is no functional reason why you need to use the AUR for this package. There is no reason why the 580 legacy branch couldn't have been kept in the main repos for at least a month, a week, some level of time that users could easily migrate over and have some ability to fix up their system. And amongst other things, that is what CashOS is doing. They're also doing some automatic hardware detection, which I understand would never happen in Arch Linux, but they are maintaining those drivers in their repo, at least for some amount of time, and then at some point in the future, I'm sure they're going to get rid of them. But the Arch Linux solution was, well, we just have one Nvidia package, and the legacy branch, that goes to the AUR. And that is consistent with how Arch Linux does for all of the other things they do, right? That's the way they handle the Linux kernel and a bunch of other stuff. But it would be nice, at least, to have a little bit of runway. Thankfully, the people running the Arch wiki have gone and updated already to mention all the things you need to use. This is great. I love the Arch wiki, but I am sure I'm going to be seeing posts over the next couple of months being very confused about why their GPU is not working upon installation, getting very annoyed with Arch Linux, because that's what always tends to happen. Whilst this is something that Arch Linux is dealing with now, and Arch Linux tends to be the shield that is blocking all of the problems that every other distro has to deal with eventually, This is something every other distro is going to have to deal with eventually. When they deal with it is depending on how they handle their software updates. If it's a rolling release, you're probably going to have to deal with it sometime soon. I don't think Gen 2 has the version packaged just yet, but you can easily go and block a version there, so it's not that big of a deal over on that side. Some distros hopefully have migration strategies in place and automatic hardware detection. If it's a distro that does a big new release and then holds everything until the next release, you don't really have to deal with it anytime soon. So just keep that in mind, that when the next version comes out, just make sure that everything there has been dealt with. I would expect any of the well-maintained distros to actually take this problem seriously, but I do expect some things to slip through the cracks, and I'm sure there is going to be people with 10 series cards that get very annoyed over the next couple of months. But let me know, did you run into this problem and not realize it was happening? Were you reading the news feed and waited a couple of days? I'd love to know. Let me know down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to... Yep, LiberaPay linked in the description down below. That's gonna be it for me, and you'd think I know how to do my outro now, but apparently not. Something Nvidia is green. Yeah, bye.